Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to Nordic Islanders franchise mode here in NHL 25. So last episode, if you did not catch it, we had the draft and re-sign stage, and obviously we're up here in free agency hoping that we could pretty much kind of keep the team together in a way, but obviously make it better too, because we still haven't had that success yet at winning a Stanley Cup despite going into our second last season in this episode, which is pretty insane. So hopefully we could have a pretty decent looking team on paper. There is some things that we're going to be addressing because we almost have too many players pretty much that are all fighting for bottom six spots. So likely we are going to make some trades involving some of those players. And then also guys like, for instance, our center depth is not the best. We do have Mäkinen and Ashton, and we also do have who's currently an RFA, that is Pollock. We kind of need another center on this team is what I see, at least. So I think one thing we're going to be looking to trade some of those players in the bottom six for is for centers, so we actually could have more chances to win faceoffs, because right now I think that's probably a glaring issue. There's not really a whole lot of issues on this team because we do have a pretty strong defensive core going into next season again. And then from a goaltending perspective, our goaltending tandem should be pretty solid again, just because last year was really good. So I think for the most part, it's just about addressing that center depth, and then hopefully next year we have another good season, because we do have some pretty big UFAs going into the last season, at least, like guys like Azanov, Ashton, Crane again. I would assume Crane will retire before the series ends still, but there is a chance he could play right till the end. So we will see what our team's looking like in that final season, but at least we have a bunch of RFAs, so pretty much most of this team should be able to stick together for the most part, but there is probably some changes coming to this lineup just to try and make it better defensively in that bottom six and also improve the center depth while we're at it. So anyways, with that said, let's get in your guys' comments, see what you guys have to say about last episode, and then we will get into maybe making some pretty big splashes this offseason. So the first and only comment is from Sanrataku, says, trade away the players who have the lowest defensive awareness. Whether you want to acquire a true third pairing D-man or a third/fourth line defensively minded center is up to you. Greeny won't be terrible with his defensive awareness is high enough, 85 or better. So he's saying basically to trade away the players with the lowest defensive awareness, which I think is pretty much what we need to look into. So we're going to be doing a lot of due diligence, looking through everybody that could fit into that bottom six and trading away the guys that have the lowest defensive awareness, and probably we'll end up trading them to try and get somebody that's in our center position, just because center is something we need. He was mentioning maybe about a third or a third pairing defenseman or a fourth line in minded center. Obviously, it wouldn't cost us a ton to get a fourth line minded center. I think Pollock's pretty much a fourth line center as is, so maybe a third line center is better. Because if we look at Pollock, for instance, he's only a 78 at 24. He is listed as a fourth liner. He has had some pretty solid seasons. Like, I feel like he could get an elevated role if we really wanted to. But I think for the time being, we'll probably prefer to leave him in the bottom six. Now, he is kind of inconsistent, but because his first ever playoffs, he had 8 goals in 12 games, which is almost as much as he had during the regular season. And then last year in the playoffs, he had no points through 7 games. So I'm hoping, obviously, we get the best version of Pollock going forward, but he's likely going to be our fourth line center. So I think a third line center is probably what we look to. Now, Ashton's kind of close to being a third-line center, but he's still listed as a second-line center. Meanwhile, Mäkinen is still on the decline and listed as a second-line center. So, technically, if we really wanted, we could probably go for a first-line center or a second-line center. But I think just to make sure these guys are still getting ice time, obviously a third-line center is probably the best we want to go for right now. And then, obviously, if we need to make changes throughout the season, we obviously could. So, but he was mentioning about maybe also a top 6 defenseman. I don't think we really need a true top 6 defenseman. I think Strombo, obviously he's down to a 72 right now. I think he'll jump up to a 78 before the season starts, because he's having maybe a bit of a morale crisis right now. But I think he should be still listed pretty much as a top 6 defenseman before the season starts. So we probably just need a depth defenseman if we're bringing in anything from the free agent market. So let me actually open up a notepad file here so I can kind of see what we need. So I'd say we need to sign one depth defenseman and then make them like maybe a 78 or so, or overall, maybe a 77, something like that. Goalies, we don't need anything. Forward-wise, we're potentially looking for a third-line center, so I'll write down 3. Now let's write down 2 to 3 C, third C, because that's something we could potentially use. And then obviously we're going to have to make some decisions on this bottom 6. So let's go through everybody that could be in the bottom 6 this upcoming season that we're thinking about potentially moving out from. Anybody that's basically a 79 or lower, so that includes like Schroeder and all that. So if we're looking for players with the worst defensive awareness, let's see who we got. So Trotter has only 81 defensive awareness, so let's just write that down. I'm going to try and write down everybody so that way we kind of have an idea of who's bad. Girard's probably one of these guys that should stay for the bottom six just based on that defensive awareness alone. 89. So Girard's looking pretty good for that bottom six. Markstrom's got good defensive awareness as well for a sniper. I'm almost thinking Trotter might be on his way out potentially now. He is making some money, and I don't know if we're cap compliant. I think we are cap compliant, but we would probably have to do... he'd probably be one of these players that I kind of don't want to trade, but we might honestly have to part ways with him. We'll come back to him in a bit. He is listed as a third-line scoring forward, so I think he is better than a 79, like it says, but he might be an option to move out. Right wing side of things, in terms of the 79 overall or lower, guys, we have Hybert. And I need to go to his attributes. 86 defensive awareness as well for Hybert, despite being a playmaker. So let's write that down. Just want to make sure we find the best defensive players here as well. Howes actually has 85 defensive awareness. That's kind of surprising to me. All right. Doesn't have the best face-off stats, and I think last year we used him as a centerman, correct? Let's double check on that. Yeah, we used him as a centerman last year. He's not the best face-off guy, even though he does have center as a position. So I feel like he's maybe one of those guys we would chop out just because of the fact we are going to be looking for a center already, and we could use him maybe as a right winger, but tough to say. Koivunen is definitely the worst defensively, and he hasn't really produced at the NHL level yet. He's a good AHL scorer, but he's only a 79 defensive awareness. And then we also have a couple other guys still to go through, DeKeyser and Grolo. I think that is it, potentially. But DeKeyser defensively only an 82, so he's not the best defensively either, which isn't ideal. And then we go down to Grolo, who's only got 70 defensive awareness. Holy crap, man. I didn't even realize this guy was that bad when I brought him in as a awareness type player. Like, his offensive awareness even isn't that good. But I think he was okay offensively as a depth forward before. Yeah, he had 10 points in 25 games despite the 73 offensive awareness. So there's that. Let's go to the AHL for a second here. Is there anybody else? Oh, yeah, there's Terry. Yeah, Neil Terry. Let's see, his defensive awareness, 83. Terry's got 83 defensive awareness, and he's currently an RFA at the moment. Was there anybody else there? No, Gove is probably fine to stay in the AHL. And then there's Pollock too, for instance, I guess, technically. Pollock doesn't really have good defensive awareness, but I think we're going to hold on to him just because centers are something we need. So Pollock, I don't think I'm going to add to this list. But I think from that, we have basically 3, 6, 9 names, and only 6 roster spots in that bottom 6, I guess. Because technically, if we look at our roster aside from those guys, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 players. So I guess technically there would be 1, 2. There's only 4 roster spots in that bottom 6. Only 4 roster spots for 9 people. So 5 of those players probably have to get dealt. Potentially. That's insane. I mean, we could run some of them maybe back in the AHL if we really want to. But, yeah, a lot of these guys have to go. So we only have 4 roster spots. I'm going to write that down as well. Sorry for all the typing noises. I mean, it's good ASMR, I guess. But so we need 4. We have 4 roster spots for the bottom 6. I mean, technically some could be depth forwards. So let's say 2 of them are depth forwards as well. So that way we say we actually only, there's 6 roster spots available. So that way we only have to get rid of 3 of those 9 people. So technically if we're going off of the defensive awareness alone, the worst defensive awareness by far is Koivunen with the 79. There's Grolo, who's a depth forward at a 70. That's actually technically the worst. But by the players that we drafted, it's definitely Koivunen. And then the worst after that is Trotter defensively. Trotter, damn. I wasn't expecting him to be the lowest. So, yeah, Trotter, Koivunen, and Grolo are the 3 guys that would probably be on the chopping block here, based on that. Now, do I want to get rid of Trotter? Tough to say. He did have a regression year. He is making 5.3. He did have 22 goals, though. So, he is still a good goal scorer. His just points total dropped off a bit. I think I like Trotter still as a third-line scoring option. So I don't think I'm going to list him just because he can pick up points. So I don't think Trotter is going to be one of those guys to get rid of. So the next worst defensive player, basically other than Koivunen and Grolo, is DeKaiser, who's never played an NHL game yet, I don't think, at this point. So I'm not partial to him yet, but technically everybody else has 83 defensive awareness and above. Everybody else actually is 85 and above pretty much, except for Terry, who's currently an RFA. Who would I be using still as a depth forward? So basically right now, Terry would probably be like a fourth line guy. Hybrid would be a fourth line guy. Howes would be a depth option probably, just because we're going to be upgrading that center position. So if we go to Howes here, for instance, is he listed as a depth forward? He is. So yeah, Howes would be depth, I think. Let me write some of this down, trying to figure out things. Sorry if this doesn't make sense as I'm recording this. Terry comes back into the lineup this year as a full-time fourth liner potentially. Same goes with Hybert. We only have 3 fourth line spots available, and 1 third line spot, probably 2. Actually, but we're going to be bringing in a center, so technically there's not going to be as much spots, I guess. Girard's probably a good player for the third or fourth line, so he's either or. Actually, maybe he is good for the fourth line because he's good defensive awareness. Markstrom is more of an offensive player in a way. He is a sniper, so he's probably more of a third. So, basically, let me readjust this a little note thing here. I know you guys can't see anything going on, but trying to figure out some stuff here. So, basically, by that logic, I'd have Girard, Hybert, Terry making up our fourth line. Howes would be a depth forward. Markstrom would be a third line forward. I said I had 6 roster spots, so that would be 5 players that we'd have. It's actually 8 people, I guess, total, because I already took Schroeder off the list. Schroeder would have to be third line as well. That's one thing I forgot to write down just because I took him off the list. So Schroeder, we would say, is a third liner. Would be third line. So basically right now we'd have first line for Mackinnon, first line, and first line probably for Harris. So we already have our first line. Second line, Ashton, Kazanov, and Dempsey. Third line would be whoever we pick up at center. Crane and Trotter, probably. Fourth line would be Pollock with Hybert and Terry, or Hybert and Markstrom. Yeah, I feel like we still have maybe too much people at that point. But I think we have an idea at least who we want to trade. So, sorry about that random ramble, but I think we know who we're going to trade. And it's probably going to be DeKaiser, Koivunen, and Grollo. Koivunen, like I said, I just don't think he really has panned out as much as I was hoping for. I think maybe giving him a chance to go to a different team, maybe he could succeed better. But his stats through his first 2 seasons really haven't been that impressive. He's only played... Actually, it was only this season alone. 34 games, 6 points. Playoff-wise, hasn't got a playoff game under his belt yet. But, yeah, I think he's definitely gone. And then DeKaiser is kind of an interesting player. Was a former first-round pick. We haven't really given him a shot, but I just don't think I could find a way to get him in. Very good AHL player. Still listed as a depth forward, too. And then Grollo, for sure, just is kind of like a filler option. We did actually draft him. I didn't think we drafted him, but yeah, he's not the best player in the world defensively, so that's the main reason why I think he'd be moved out. I think he's a good offensive depth forward, though, which could put somebody else on the block. Like, maybe we instead move out from Terry, because Terry is going to be in the UFA at the end of the year. Terry's not much better defensively than DeKaiser, technically. Maybe Terry gets moved instead, but I feel like Terry has less value. We'll take a look at this. Let's actually go propose some trades, but I think Greening in Columbus is a nice 3C. I think that's the guy we're going to be looking into. The guy that Saturn Talk was mentioning. I think he's probably what we want here. And he wouldn't cost us too much, I don't think. He's actually got maybe a decent chunk of value. He's a penny free agent. Just came off of a 50-point season, so he can produce... And he is a grinder, I think it was. Yeah, he's a grinder. He actually doesn't have great defensive awareness, but his shot blocking, stick checking, face-offs are decent. So that's more why I'd want him on this team, I think. He also has won a cup. So if we did Greening and we were basically trading away, Grollo would be the first one. So where's Grollo? Grollo does not have a lot of value whatsoever. So we add Grollo. Koivunen actually has some value. We don't need him. That's actually pretty close on value already. And then, like I said, Terry or DeKaiser probably in this spot would work. DeKaiser has a little bit of value. Terry has probably no value. Yeah, Terry does not have a lot whatsoever. Let's see, Terry. I like his some of his defensive stats. Like his awareness is a little bit lower end, but his shot blocking and stick checking is good. Greening, how good was his defensive awareness again? It was only an 81. Sarantaku said if it was 85 or above would be probably nice, right? Greening wouldn't be terrible if his high enough defensive awareness. Yeah, maybe Greening's not the guy then. If I go to the trade finder with the people that I have in mind about trading, is there an interesting offer that we could potentially get? Like, I feel like Greening's the only one I would look to bring in for that center spot, but maybe we just don't even bring in Greening, and we look to do something instead at the season. So, DeKaiser, Koivunen, and Grollo. Let's just add them all to this trade and see if there's any offers potentially thrown to us. So, DeKaiser, Grollo, and we need Koivunen as well. Where is Koivunen? He's a right winger too? Yeah, they're all right wingers. So let's see. Nothing found with an open block. Nothing found. God damn it, man. This makes it so much tougher when the AI doesn't have a trade for me in mind. I wonder if there's anybody interested in all three of those players, because maybe that will make it a little bit easier. So adding Koivunen, adding DeKaiser, and adding Grollo. I'm almost debating about moving out Howes instead, but his defensive awareness is good, just because we do need a center, and Howes would probably have to play more on the right wing side of things if he's even playing. So Anaheim has interest in all three of these players, so that's good to see. Anybody else have interest in all three, or is it just the Ducks? I feel like the Ducks weren't really good recently. So the Ducks, the Oilers just won the Stanley Cup, so I don't really feel like trading with them again. Florida, and tough to say. They're in our conference, so I don't really like that. Minnesota has interest in all of them, but they're very up against the cap. So Anaheim and Minnesota will come back to. Nashville. Let me actually write down some of these teams. I know this is a lot of due diligence to do, but I feel like this is the best thing we need to do, and that way we could get the best bang for our buck, so to speak. So, anybody else? San Jose is another team. All right, so there is a couple teams that have interest in everybody. So maybe some of them will have a good center we could bring in. That's not necessarily on the block. I'm okay with giving up draft picks as well at this point. So Vancouver, another team. Okay, Vancouver too. So decent chunk of Western Conference teams. Vegas actually has interest in them all too, but they have won the Cup recently. So I'm not even actually add Vegas to this list. Never mind. Just because they won the Cup recently. All right, so we have 5 teams to look through just to see if they have any centers that could potentially work as a third-line option. So who do the Ducks have at center? Do they have somebody that could work well with this team that's not too old and maybe on 1 year left? Leo Carlson's literally 42 years old, as we saw in last episode. He's making a lot of money. We do have cap space. But is Leo Carlson the third-line center I need? I don't really know. At this point, he's probably going to drop off a lot, so I don't know about that. There's also this Larry Olsen guy. Good defensive awareness. Not the craziest face-off stat, though, which I prefer to have good face-off stats. 46 points. He's only played 3 years, and he's 26. He's not really that bad. Might fit our third line, too. It's not a costly deal, but it is multiple years. That's the only problem I probably have with that guy. But let's say from the Ducks, let me just write down Olsen. And that way I kind of have an idea of who I might want to bring in from these teams. I don't think anybody else really makes sense. Let's go to Minnesota. See what they have for centers. Hopefully they have some centers too. Which they do. They have that Jääskeläinen guy. Ooh. This Jääskeläinen guy is not the Jääskeläinen we used to have because he recently retired, but Tuukka Jääskeläinen is a good player. He's a sniper, very good defensive stats for a sniper, very good face-off stats. He's obviously going to have a ton of value. He would probably bolster our center depth quite a bit. He is on 1 year left, does not have an extension in place. He's not on the block, but maybe he would come here. At this point, we become like a retirement home of old people, but Jaskaline's kind of interesting. There's also Jocelyn on 1 year left too, but he's making 8.3. He's a decent player. Had an 87-point season 1 year. Yeah, he's actually a pretty good offensive player. Over point per game in his career in the playoffs too. That's actually kind of an interesting stat. 30 years old with 1 year left. All right, there is definitely some options. We will definitely maybe look back at a couple of these dudes. So I'll write Jaskalainen. And then I'll also write Jocelyn too. I think we're doing some good work here. This is what I kind of want to do in this episode. I want to take it a little bit slow. Hopefully you guys are okay with that too, because I don't really want to advance to next season just like that fast, because I know that these last 2 seasons are very, very important if we want to try and get ourselves a Stanley Cup. Nashville has Bjorkstrand, but obviously he's on a no movement clause. He's our former player. He's making a ton of money too. Foy, same boat. He's on a no movement clause, but he is in the last year of his contract. There is Murray, who we were interested in at one point, but he has dropped down to a 79 only. He's more of a fourth line kind of guy. Good player, but he's more of a fourth liner. So Nashville's probably the first team that we're going to actually eliminate from this list. What about San Jose? I know I don't need to keep going back to the screen, but I just like going back to the screen anyways. Just fun. San Jose, Moore's 25 years old, $19.895 million for 3 years. Can't really take that on. Ekblad's got 1 year left as well at an 84, 12.5. That is a high cap hit. He is a decent player, but I'd almost say that Jocelyn's better in a way. Tough to say, but yeah, Ekblad's definitely not the option I'd be willing to bring in. Walters is on a no trade clause, signed for too many years as well. Beckett is a second line player. He's not bad. 429 points, 820 games, 10 points in 22 playoff games. Also drafted by the Sharks. Not terrible defensively. Beckett might be okay for San Jose, but he's not a high value player. I got to see obviously what teams are wanting for these players too, like if there's any draft picks involved and stuff as well. But Beckett's okay. Aside from that, that's pretty much the only player in San Jose. Vancouver's the last one on our list here. We could add Vegas and stuff to this as well, but I'd prefer not since they beat us in the Cup Finals. These 4-year left contracts, I don't really want to take that on. 2 years left at 9.3 is kind of high. This guy's just coming off his ELC. Same with this guy soon too. 28 and 79 is not worth it. Yeah, Vancouver's another team that I probably wouldn't trade with. So we only have a couple options if we really need this third line center / second line center. So Anaheim has Olsen. Minnesota has Jaskalainen and Jocelyn. San Jose has Beckett. Let's remove these guys from the trade. We'll go to the fine trade option and just see basically straight out what these teams want for these players. And then we could readjust the offers accordingly by adding the guys that we need to move out as well. So Anaheim, what do they want for Olsen? Is it something that's going to cost us a ton more on top of the players that we want to move out? Let's see. He's only an 81. A second in Dempsey, I would not be willing to do. I do want Dempsey to stay here for a bit. Jensen and Dempsey, no thank you. Buckley and Dempsey, no thank you. Gove and Dempsey, and Karostin and Dempsey. So the only way a deal seems to be getting done with Anaheim is if we give up Dempsey instead of giving up one of those younger options, which I don't think I really want to do. But we could probably finesse a deal because of the fact that Dempsey doesn't have a lot of value. I think using guys like Koivunen and DeKaiser, I can get a deal done for Olsen if we really want to. And he is the youngest out of these options. He is signed for 3 years, but it's a pretty cheap contract, I'd say. So it's not like it's going to hurt us that much. Minnesota, this is probably where it would cost a lot more, is Jaskalainen and Jocelyn. Both of them don't have a ton of value, though, so maybe it's not that bad. Jaskalainen would not even come here. That's unfortunate. So, unfortunately, Jaskalainen, despite looking really good, he's going to be somebody we cannot trade for. He would not come to this team. That kind of sucks. So Jocelyn's our only option really in Minnesota then. And I do kind of like Jocelyn as well as a player. Based on his stats, like I said, he had an 87-point season 1 year. He might be a good player. He's only 30 as well. It's not like he's that old. Very good defensive awareness. Face-offs are average, but that defensive awareness is fantastic. So how much would it cost for Jocelyn? Karostin, Dempsey, and Trotter. Trotter gets maybe involved in a trade. We could still think about moving out Trotter instead of somebody like DeKaiser. But moving out Dempsey doesn't make sense. Karostin, I'm okay with maybe moving out, but he is one of our better defensive prospects. I think I could probably still work something out for Jocelyn, potentially. And then finally, the San Jose Sharks with Beckett. He's probably the lowest value of the bunch, my guess. Let's see. Beckett. How much would he cost? Dempsey, Trotter, and Grollo. We do need to move out Grollo, so that's one of the players at least involved. Trotter and Smith not doing it. Hybert, Howes, and Trotter. Alright. Lysak, Pollock, and Grollo. And Koivunen and Trotter. So they are involving some of the players that we have wanting to move out in these deals. Let's go back to proposed trade with these teams. See how close the values would be, basically, if we're to trade for these guys. So, once again, sorry about adding all this extra time just to figure out some deals, but I think this is important. Koivunen, DeKaiser, and Grollo. How close of value is it with Anaheim and Olsen? Like, would we be able to get it done, basically? Probably, actually. Yeah, the value looks pretty close. So, Olsen could work. Olsen could work. We'll head back to Minnesota, check on Jocelyn, and see the values on that. So, let's see on Jocelyn. Probably we could get Jocelyn done. Obviously, we'd probably want to get them to retain so we could add a pick into the deal. Just because 8.3 is a little bit on the higher end side of things, but we do have the cap space, and it is only for the 1 year. So we can get Jocelyn, and in San Jose we probably could get Beckett because I think he's the worst of the three. Let's see on this. Yeah, we could easily get all three of these guys, and the lowest cap hit, let me take a look at these. 4.5 for an 82. So 4.5 for an 82. There was, how much was Jocelyn? Jocelyn was the most expensive player. 8.3 for an 83. So it's an extra $4 million for one overall point better. Sorry if you could hear my cat meowing. He thinks it's almost his food time, which it's still like 20 minutes away. Aside from that, though, let's see. I haven't put my face back on screen in a while, so there you go. Let's just do that just because I've been trying to figure out this deal for the most part. Who was the other team that I was mentioning? Oh, yeah, Anaheim. Olsen. Shut up, Rocky. My cat. Goddamn, man. 3.89 for an 81. So basically, if we wanted to get an 81, we're paying almost $4 million. If we wanted the 82, we're paying just over $4 million. And if we wanted 83, we're paying $8 million. But if we look at the comparison, these guys as of recently, 46 points in 82 games for Olsen. 46 points only. And then we head to Minnesota. And we look back at Jocelyn. He's the highest paid player. He had 51 last year, so only 5 more points. Has been down the last 2 years a little bit. But Minnesota has... They've actually made the playoffs those years, too. That year, he only had 49 regular season points. He had 12 in the playoffs, so... Has he ever won a cup? No, he has not. Then San Jose. We'll head there again. Beckett. How much points did he have? I feel like all these guys are very similar. Beckett had the most points out of the three, but he is also the oldest. He is also the oldest, so there's a chance he drops off. 92 passing. His defensive awareness is an 84. Who has the best defensive awareness? I think that might make the difference with who we trade for. Trying to make sure we make the smartest move possible. Jocelyn, 89. I think it's got to be Jocelyn despite his cap hit. We might have to try and get them to retain a bit, but I think it's got to be Jocelyn. Olsen's good for a younger option, but his defensive awareness is only 86. His face-offs aren't the best. Yeah, I think it's got to be the Minnesota guy. I think it's got to be the Minnesota dude. So, Jocelyn, let's see if we can get him for, like, retained salary. So, he's making 8.3. How close are they to the cap floor? Not really that close. Let's see if we could get them to retain 50% if I add a pick into this deal. I just think it would be nice to get them to retain. Obviously, sometimes it's tough to get the AI to retain, but He is a very costly player. The more cap space we have for other trades this season, I think the better. I don't think this would work straight up, just those 3 for basically a guy at 50% retained, but it could. It could. So would this work? Koivunen, DeKaiser, and Grollo for Jocelyn. Would it work? And that's rejected. So if I add a pick into this deal because they are retaining, they do have interest in Edmonton's third. I have no interest in Edmonton's third or our own third round picks. So let's move out 2 third round picks on top. Actually, let's try 1 third at the start, and then we could add more if need be. So would that third from the Edmonton Oilers be enough? That's still rejected. Okay. If I added my own third round pick into this deal, so 2 third round picks to help them retain 50% basically. That's still rejected. So we'd have to probably do a second rounder in that sense to get them to retain. I think it's worth giving up a second rounder, honestly, to get them to retain half of the money. And then, like I said, then we have more money for potential other things to do this season. So would this work? And that's still rejected, all right? A little bit harder than I thought, but that's okay. We're going to still work on this. A second and a third, so they would retain 50%. That's still rejected. What if I gave you the second and I basically got you to retain 40% instead of 50%? We are trying to get into the nitty-gritty of deals, but I want to get a deal done here. Still not willing to accept it at 40%. What if I add that third rounder back at 40%? Would that work? Still rejected. Okay. What if I knock this down to 30? I want this knocked down to 35%. Trying to save at least a little bit of money. It's not necessarily something we have to do, but the more money we save, the better. So a second for 35% retained. No. What if I gave you that third rounder into the deal? Still rejected. Minnesota's making it a little bit tough, but we are going to work this magic. I know it's a lot boring just me trying to figure out these deals, but I think it will be worth it for us. Let's do 30% retained for that second rounder, basically. No. What again about if I add that third again? Would this help? No. I know AI teams sometimes don't like retaining, but we got to figure out a way to get them to retain at least a little bit of money. Just to help us out down the road. 25% for that second rounder. No. Oh, man. Minnesota's being a bit of a dick, but I understand it, too. In a way, retaining salary is not necessarily the most fun thing. Adding a third does not make it enough value. Maybe they have more value. Maybe they think Jocelyn's worth a lot more than I expected. I might have to give up a first round pick potentially. We'll see. 20% retained for that second. Nope. I'm trying to help you guys free up cap space. You know that. We'll add that third rounder to this deal again. See if that works. This is definitely tougher than I was expecting, but I want this guy, I think, the best out of the bunch, just because of his defensive awareness mostly. And that still doesn't work. God damn. All right. Let's knock this down to 10% retained. You don't need to retain that much, Minnesota. Just retain at least some. It's still rejected. I feel like they wouldn't even accept this maybe at full salaries, so maybe I actually do have to add way more than I thought. 5% retained? Rejected still. Damn, yeah, see, at 5% retained, they wouldn't even take the second and a third. So they won't even accept this probably just like this, my guess. But we are going to remove this stuff. Let's just see this first and foremost again. Still rejected. So yeah, they do have a little bit of high value. So if I gave you guys 2 second round picks, because at this point I don't care about those draft selections, would this work? And maybe would you be willing to at least retain some money on this? Like 10%, you get 2 second round picks on top of all these prospects. I feel like maybe I could actually get them to retain more if I'm giving up 2 second rounders. But maybe I'm going to get into that same argument as last time. So 20% for 2 second round picks and all these guys. Nope. Not going to work. Damn, man. I'm trying my best not to give up our first just yet. Trying my best. Still won't work. Wow. I'm surprised that these teams won't want to retain just because, like, we've done some trades before that teams have retained on. This one's definitely the hardest. Still not willing to accept the deal, huh? So, can I even get you to retain at all, is the question? No, not yet. Okay, we might have to give up a first round pick here. At 0% retain, would this even work? Yes, it would. Well, that's annoying, and I think that they, it says, I doubt anybody will think Minnesota came out on the short end of the stick with this deal, so it's a done deal. I could have got them to retain, I guess, but maybe it was only going to be like 3%, but, oh well, it's only a 1-year contract. We do bring in our center. It was a lot of negotiation with Minnesota. I think they just tried to get us finessed or something, but we do get ourselves that center. We offload the players we don't need, and I think we only just need to sign ourselves a depth defenseman now. But Jocelyn, you could say, is pretty much basically just like another Ashton or Makinen. But at this point, we just need more center depth, I think, or else this team isn't going to be good enough. Now we actually have people that could win faceoffs on multiple lines. Before, we had to run Houses as center, and like I said, his faceoff stats aren't the best. So I think we're good. We just need that depth defenseman, so let's go to free agency and sign one up. I apologize about that taking, like, how many minutes did that take? Like 35 minutes to figure out some deals, but I think we did the right work, and hopefully it pays off. If it doesn't, obviously that guy doesn't even have a clause, so we could upgrade him if need be. But, yeah, I think I still want to simulate some of the season in this episode. Not too much, just because that took a while to do, but I do want to simulate a little bit at least. Let's just get in somebody like a 78, somebody that could maybe compete for a top 6 job. Not somebody listed as a top 6 defenseman, no. Just somebody that could compete potentially with Strombo. Because I don't know if Strombo will be a depth defenseman or what. Like somebody like this Audette dude probably would work. Good defensive awareness, good shot blocking, stick checking. Only 3-star defensively, but we might as well try him out here. So we'll do a 1-year deal. He wants a 2-way deal. I'm going to give him a 1-way just because I'm a little bit nice with it. So let's do, sure, take a little bit over $1 million. He should easily accept that. And that way we just have ourselves a depth option to go to potentially. So I think we're good on everything else. There was the chance we could upgrade our defensive core if we really wanted to more so. Because it's Holmstrom, Schaefer, Smith, Ekblad, Jersina, and Strombo. But I don't think it's something that's absolutely necessary right now. So I think we're actually good to start simulating. I got to double check on coaching staff here briefly. We're good on NHL coaching staff, so that's good. Scouts, we don't really care about at this point. So I think we are good to go. Let's advance a few days, see if we get that depth defenseman, and then we will sim up to the start of next season and get our lineup set up. But I definitely think there is still a lot of weakness on this team because of age. So we might have to make some more movements in next episode to upgrade things, but depends on how our team simulates. So Audette decided to accept, which is great. And let's decline that. We're going to probably have to edit our trading block so we don't get any offers thrown at us. But we do have some one RFA, I think, or 2 RFAs at the moment, right? Because Terry was an RFA. Let me stop the sim. And Bergenheim, actually, for that matter. I want to see if those guys are coming down in price at all, because I don't want to get into a process where a lot of teams are going to try and get those guys from us. Pollock, what are you wanting now at this point? You know what? Take the 1.3. We have the cap space. Jersina, what did you want still at this point? 950. Damn, take the money. Take the money. 950 is nice. And then Terry, we'll bring you back. You might get dealt at some point, but we're going to knock this down a little bit just to try and get you down by 2 bars around, 2.35. And goaltending, Bergenheim's the most expensive of the bunch. 2-year deal. We're going to knock this down a little bit just so he's signed right till the end of this franchise mode and I don't have to worry about negotiating again. There you go. Perfect. I just don't want to risk losing those guys to other teams, basically. Because we know that Nicholas was a guy that I probably should have let go to another team, but I didn't. Let's go to edit trading block here and just get rid of everything on our block for the time being, just because some of these offers are kind of annoying. But yeah, I think our team is definitely not as good as we used to be, but I think we are definitely at least kind of still hanging in the balance that we should be a playoff team. It's just more about the age on this roster. That's the most concerning thing about guys dropping off so much. That's why also bringing in that center is a good idea, because he probably shouldn't drop off because he's only 30. Meanwhile, guys like Mäkinen could be a third-line scoring forward by next season, so maybe that guy gets a big chance that we just brought in our top 6 if our centers are dropping off. So I think that's the right time for that movement. Terry accepts the offer, same with Bergenheim. The other guys already accepted automatically, so we are pretty much good with that. Irwin lost morale because we re-signed Bergenheim, which is interesting because both of them are the goaltending tandem, but it's more just because they have the exact same type of role. So maybe we have to think about trading one for more of a backup at some point. But we don't have a lot of years left to this, so it's not going to matter too much, I don't think. All right, let's get this self set up here. Oh, boy. Kind of sucks that we lost Howden into retirement last season, though. All right, so yeah, goaltending, Bergenheim and Irwin, both listed as starting goaltenders, so we are going to simulate a little bit of the season, but maybe we need to think about potentially moving out from one. It's tough to say. We do have Olver, who is very close to being a backup. He's still a minor starting goaltender right now, but he could definitely take that backup job already if we really want. So, tough to say. From a defensive standpoint, we have Schaefer, Holmstrom, Smith, Ekblad, Jersina, Audette. Strombo is still listed only as a 73, but a top 6 defenseman, so we are going to call him up, and he should go back up soon. He's going to look low right now, but he should be fine. We are going to have to send somebody down, though. Forward-wise, we have Lysak, Dempsey, Harris, Hybert, House. That's fine. Anybody in the AHL that shouldn't be? Nope, never mind. Left wing side of things, Ragnarsson, Kazanov, Crane, Trotter, Gerard, and Terry. Markstrom's down there. He should probably be up. Gove is pretty much ready to go. Same with Grummett, Morris. I forgot about these guys, but they could probably stay in the AHL a little bit longer. It's not a huge issue. And then centers, we have Mäkinen, Jocelyn, Ashton, and Pollock. Damn, man. Who am I going to send down to call up these two dudes? Because we definitely need a depth defenseman. We have too much forwards still, even though we just made that trade, I think. Let's look at the forwards and their roles here for a second here. Sort by role. So we have 1 first, we have 2 seconds. Who's actually listed as a depth forward? So Gerard, I'd like to play him. Hybert's listed as a third-line scoring forward as an 80. He should be like a fourth-line forward at best. Damn. I have to send down at least 2 people. So it has to be 1 forward. Oh, man. Yeah, we're going to have definitely people complain. I might have to trade some more people. Maybe I didn't even need that center, but I feel like we did need centers. I think Terry I'm going to send back down. I was just re-signing him, but we might need to trade him just because he's kind of one of the lower end guys here. And then we need to move down 1 more player. If we sort by overall, let me just actually take a look at this. Trotter's a second line forward? Yeah, Trotter's a second line forward as an 81? Holy moly. That's ridiculous. Don't want to move Hybrid, but it might have to be Hybrid. Actually, maybe I would go with Howes still. He was listed as a depth forward. We do have more centers now. Yeah, let's go with Howes. So we'll go with that, but I think we need to trade Harry and Howes unless we want to keep them in the AHL all year round like we did last year. But there's definitely still some work to go, I think, with setting this roster up. There's going to be people scratched that I don't really want to scratch, but we'll probably have to. All right, so let's see. Try and see what I want to do here. Actually, yeah, Jocelyn was listed as a third-line scoring forward, but he will be getting power play time. Trotter needs to be more third-line. That looks okay. Who's scratched, though? Dempsey should not be scratched in the slightest. Hybert is listed as a scoring forward, but he might be somebody that shouldn't be in. Gerard's technically a depth forward. I don't really want to scratch him because of his defensive awareness, though. Markstrom probably shouldn't be scratched, but he's listed as a depth forward. I guess it's okay to scratch him. I just don't really want to, though. My God, there's way more tougher decisions than I thought. We got to get Dempsey in, though, so I'm going to take Hybrid out. Hybrid might have to get dealt. We have probably way too many cooks in the kitchen still with those moves. Lysak's a checking forward, so he's okay probably to be a fourth-line guy. So I think this is probably the lines I would plan towards. Yeah, probably something like that. And then defensively, we want Smith into the top 4 with Ekblad. Jersina can move over here. Audette's going to be a depth defenseman for us, so Strombo will come in. That looks fine. Goalies, Bergenheim and Irwin. Yeah, the only player I don't really want to scratch is Hybert. Is there anybody listed as a depth forward that I would be okay with scratching? Terry's a third line checking. Menino's a depth forward. Let's call it Menino as that other depth forward and send Hybert down, I think. We probably have to trade some of these guys more this season, but they should be okay with their ice time in the AHL, so maybe we don't need to trade them right this episode, but definitely in future episodes. But yeah, let's call it Menino as the depth option, and we will send down, where are you? Send out Hybert. We just have way too much guys listed as bottom 6 players. Our third line scoring forwards. So now, if we look at our roster, we actually have a bunch of guys that are listed as depth forwards and defensemen. They won't complain. Lineup looks set up down there. AHL-wise, anybody scratch it? Shouldn't be. Nope. Okay, so that's good. That's good. But it is still... I don't know. I don't really know if I really like having Howes down there, Hybert down there, Terry down there, Goving, Grummett, Morris. But at least that means we have the depth that we could call up or potentially trade for better players. But right now, I think this looks okay. Obviously, having Harris still on the top line, maybe not the best spot for him, but he does still have good shooting enough that he should produce. If he doesn't, Dempsey can move up, because Zanov probably could be higher, hypothetically. But does that work better? Not really. We could try it out, though. But I think for now, I'll keep Harris as the top line guy. For now. Yeah, I think that's good. Let's double check the power play, make sure people are getting the right ice time. Trotter on the power play, I guess that's fine. Crane, Kazanov, Ragnarsson, sure. Harris on the point. I'll take it. I think that's fine. Jocelyn Ragnarsson on the PK is nice. Yeah, I think we'll try this out, see how it is. But definitely a lower end team that we've ever had before. But we do still have the depth at least that we could call up. And we do have a lot of cap space as well for potential trades if we need to upgrade things. But Crane's still the captain. Ragnarsson gets the A. I guess that makes sense after the retirement of Houghton. Makinen also has an A still at this point. So that looks good to me. Everything should be fine. Hopefully we don't get any morale crises, but this is going to be an interesting year. I don't know what the coach is going to think about our roster, but we will be interested to see that. So let's get a little bit of the season simulated. I technically have to feed my cats now, so I don't want to be going too far. So we will go through the preseason, and we'll probably do like December the 1st in this episode. But first and foremost, our coach, what do we got to see? Let's do some preseason focus. Let's do some conditioning because we're an old team at this point. And what does he think about our team this year? He said this team is good enough to make the playoffs. All right, so despite our team looking a little bit lower end, he thinks we're a playoff team still. So I'd like that vote of confidence. Hopefully it's good for our team. And if there's, like I said, any glaring issues, we could address it because we have the cap space. So I still feel good about this team, but I don't like that we have too many players that are NHL talent in the AHL. I feel like that's kind of cheesing it a bit, but for right now, I might be okay with it just because we've never won a cup, so we're just trying our best here. Let's go through this preseason, see how we do in it, and then, like I said, we'll probably go to December the 1st and see what we're looking like at that point. Hopefully, we get off to a decent start. Obviously, we don't need to be the President's Trophy winners this year, but as long as we get a decent start to the year, I will be happy. Like I said, I kind of want to be more of a team that not necessarily just barely makes it in, but maybe more of like a third best team in their division, so to speak. So 4-2-1 in the preseason. Let's take a look at some stats, see if there's anybody over-simulating or under-simulating. I'm just curious on that for fun. So 9 points for Ragnarsson in those 7 games. I'm glad that we re-signed him when we did, though, because I think he'd be very costly if he didn't. He's making 12.35 this year. He should be one of our best players in points at the end of the season. Looks like Harris is going to potentially have still a good year despite being 40 years old. All right. What about the goalie stats, though? That's one thing I want to know about. First and foremost, though, did Strombo jump back in overall? Not yet, but he probably will be at the start of the season. Both goalies had a great preseason, so we might be a good defensive team again. Last year, both those guys kind of surprised us, so maybe it's another year where we're going to be more of a defensively minded team again than an offensive one. All right, so let's go to December the 1st. We're going to do 1 month at a time, and we'll take a look at some stats and see if there's any underlying issues that may need to be resolved for next episode. So let's see what happens. Our first game of the season is against the Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh, and we already suffer an injury at center, so that's why it was good we brought in that other guy, because Ashton will already be out for a week only, but that's a pretty substantial injury to start off the year. Strained hamstring, which means Menino is already going to get a chance to play some games early on here. So our first game of the season was really good. Let me decline that. 6-0 win over Pittsburgh. Then we beat Colorado 4-3. So some good offensive games to start off the year. We don't need any more depth defensemen, but I appreciate it. 7-0 win over Florida. Goddamn. This team's looking good offensively to start the season. Is it going to maintain itself all year? Probably not. But, wow. Very good offense with Ashton being injured. And look at this. Mäkinen has dropped down to an 81. So that's another reason why I brought in Jocelyn. Our center depth would definitely not be super strong if I didn't do that. So is Mäkinen listed as a third-line checking forward now? He's a third-line scoring forward, but he's over point per game. So he's still playing great on that top line. But he might be demoted to third-line guy by the end of the season if he drops off even more. But yeah, definitely age is catching up to this team relatively quickly. A third in Canzanello for a 6 and a 6. No, thank you. Don't need 2 6-round picks. We do lose to Minnesota. That's our first loss of the season. We lose in a shootout to Montreal. Anaheim, 6-4 win. Very nice. Carolina and San Jose. Carolina is a win 5-4. San Jose is a 5-4 win. Damn. I was not expecting this type of start to the year. 7-1-1 in our first 9 games. And we've been pretty damn good offensively in a lot of those wins. So maybe this team is going to figure its offensive game out this year. Maybe. Let's go 1 more month, and then we'll take a look at some stats, and that'll be it for this episode. We probably won't look at the trading block yet, because I don't think trades are necessarily going to happen next episode, but I do want to just kind of see basically what this team is going through, like if there's anything that we should probably look into at addressing at the trade deadline. Should we maintain the roster pretty much? I definitely don't expect the entire season to be pretty dominant, and now we're on a losing streak, so this is pretty much where we start to fall off. We do beat Tampa, though, 4-1. Montreal's a 4-1 win. Boston's a 4-3 loss. Definitely some of our losses haven't been good defensive results, though, which kind of sucks. We didn't see where Carlton actually signed, so that kind of sucks. We'll take a look, actually, in this episode, I guess. But 12-9-1. Definitely not a strong November, but at least we started the season off, so we actually are still in second place in the Metropolitan. But that's where we're going to stop simulating. Before we take a look at player stats, though, before I forget, we are going to go to the player search and see where Carlton signed, because technically I could have brought Carlton back, but I don't think it was something that we absolutely needed to with the emergence of the guys like Smith and Ekblad, so I'm just kind of curious on where Carlton is now, and if we are going to be playing him potentially at all at any point. He signed with the Winnipeg Jets, so he has joined Giordano, and I think there was somebody else that was on the Jets at one point. It might have been Leeson, but he's not there anymore. 87-30, no movement clause, $9.88 million for 6 years on the open market. So we'll never get to see Carlton again, unfortunately, on our team. He's off to a very good start offensively this year in Winnipeg. 13 points in 21 games. So maybe not a great idea to let him go, but he is a fantastic defenseman. Just, I think, with the emergence of those young guys, it made sense for us to move on from him. So best of luck to him in Winnipeg. He'll probably win a Stanley Cup before us, knowing my luck. But let's take a look at some stats here. See if there's been any super good stats that we need to take care of. I didn't actually take a look at where we were in goals for and all that yet. Let's go back onto this screen instead, because it's easier to compare that way. So we're 13th in goals for per game. Goals against, we're 19th. And our special teams are abysmal, 28th and 21st. That's kind of surprising, because I thought we started off good, but maybe that month of November was actually really bad for us. So there is some underlying issues, 3-7 also in our last 10 games. But let's take a look if there's been anybody on the team in particular that hasn't been good. Let's take a look at some stats, man. Kazanov is almost point per game this year, and I'm guessing it's just because it's a contract year. But first and foremost, Makinen, still despite his age and his drop-off, he is on 20 points in 22 games. Very good. Jocelyn's looking fantastic here. 17 points, 22 games. That's why I brought him in. Good defense, good offense. Ashton on 15 points in 19 games despite his injuries. Pollock 7 points, not bad. Menino 3 games with no points. Left wing side of things, Kazanov done those 21 points in 22 games. Like I said, I think it's because he's in a contract year. Ragnarsson 17 points in 22 games. He's been good still. Crane on 16 points. He's still been good despite his age. Trotter on 13, solid. And Girard's been good too. No goals in 22 games, but 7 assists plus 3. I'll take it. He's not a crazy offensive talented guy. Like 2-hour shooting, only 80 passing, so... Right wing side of things, Harris is on 12 points so far. Definitely a slow start for DeAndre Harris at his age. But we don't really expect him to probably be that great this season. Just because he is 40 years old at this point, but still doing decent enough. Dempsey only on 9 points. He's on the power play, right? I'm pretty sure if he's not on the power play, we got to get him some power play time. Because that is a major drop-off. He's losing morale due to his performance, not ice time. So he's probably on the power play. Lysak 4 points. Okay. Defensively, Holmstrom's on 12 points. Smith's on 7. Schaefer on only 5. Schaefer's having a regression year offensively so far, but that's okay. He's great defensively. Jersina 4 points, minus 10. Strombo on 3 points, minus 9. Yikes. Strombo has jumped up to a top 6 defenseman, but these two haven't been very good defensively so far, and Ekblad's been solid. From a goaltending perspective, Irwin's been the better of the two. Both of them are getting right around the exact same amount of starts. Bergenheim's having a bit of a regression year after he won the Calder. Like, he's basically taking what happened to him last year in the playoffs into the regular season, unfortunately. But that's the current stats at the moment. Interesting. All right. I don't see any crazy issues, like maybe that defensive pairing of Jersina and Strombo. I don't think do they play together or no? I don't think so. Trying to remember which pairing Jersina. Actually, no, they do play together. Yeah, so those two, maybe we need a better top 6 defenseman. Aside from that, I do see some good depth scoring, but obviously there's definitely still room for improvement. Like, nobody's point per game. And then the goaltending is kind of weird with Bergenheim not playing as good this year. And I'm not too sure. Maybe it's because both of them are the exact same type of role, but that's quite the regression from a 914 to an 899. Last year in the playoffs, he was really bad, though, too. So, all right, let's briefly take a look at our AHL team as well, just to see if there's anybody that should get called up. Technically, House should be in the NHL for sure. He's 2 points per game right now. And he's not losing morale, but... yeah, him, Terry, those type of guys probably should be more NHL bound. Hybert's not playing the craziest in the AHL, but I don't really like having that much NHL guys in the AHL level, like I said. Defensively, Svedberg's getting pretty close to being an NHL defenseman for us, so that's cool. And goaltending, Canzanella's been really good as a fringe starter. Olver has been actually good too. And he's actually pretty much almost a backup. Maybe there's a chance we change up our backup spot. Move out Irwin or Bergenheim, one of the two. But yeah, House probably should be up here. But at the NHL level, I guess it does make sense. He does got good offensive awareness and passing. He probably should be up here. But I don't know who we need to trade out from the bottom 6 to do that. Yeah, I don't really know. Because I don't think I'm disappointed in really any of these players. Maybe Dempsey I'm disappointed in. He's probably the biggest disappointment right now. But... maybe it's lack of power play time. Let me double check the power play again. And then I'll end this episode at that point because we're right around an hour anyways. And like I said, my cats need to eat food. But power play, let's see. Is Dempsey on a power play unit? He is not. He is not. Oh, that's a bit of an issue. That's a bit of an issue. I probably could take Trotter off and put Dempsey up here. Yeah, I guess. I mean, Trotter's been good, but Dempsey probably needs that ice time more, so there you go. We'll go with that just to see if that helps Dempsey's offense, because like I said, he has been slacking a bit so far this season. So Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of New York Islanders franchise mode. So, in next episode, we'll probably simulate to a day before the trade deadline. Obviously, it depends on how our team's simulating as well at that point, but it's been a solid start to the year. First month was really good. Second month, kind of a bit iffy. There is definitely some good stats, but other stats like our special teams need a lot of work. So, hopefully, this team is good enough to continue winning games and get into the playoffs because, like I said, this is the second last season of this franchise mode. So, if we want to win a Stanley Cup, it's got to be this year or next year, or we never win one. So let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time.